Hey pals, ever dreamt of hopping into a DeLorean and zipping back to ancient Rome, a place of the grandeur, the drama, the sheer epicness as we often hear? You might think living in ancient Rome would be an easy-peasy thing, everyone laid back with togas and grape eating. But let me tell you, life wasn't all laurel wreaths and glitzy chariot races. Nah, it was more like navigating a labyrinth with invisible twists and turns at every corner. So for anyone thinking ancient Rome was all about kicking back with a goblet of wine, think again. It was an action-packed roller coaster where survival was the ultimate challenge. Strap in, folks, because we're about to uncover why lasting just 24 hours there would make even the bravest warrior break a sweat. The weirdest hygiene ever. All right, buckle up for some ancient bathroom tales. Toilets in ancient Rome were like something out of a prankster's handbook. There weren't any fancy flush mechanisms or porcelain thrones. Nope, it was more like a communal party in the open air. But wait, it gets even wilder. Ever heard of a sponge on a stick? Yup, that was the Roman version of toilet paper. You'd use it, rinse it in some water, hopefully, and share it with the next person in line. With everyone sharing the same sponge on a stick, it was like playing a super risky game of pass the germs. Those public toilets were like a party for bacteria. And guess what? They had a field day jumping from one person to the next. Those unsanitary conditions were like a VIP pass for diseases, and not the good kind you get a vaccine for. It seems that recycling back then had gone way too far. Now, onto the bathing scene. Romans were pretty big on their baths, but not the kind where rubber ducks hang out. These were massive bathhouses bustling with people, a bit like a water park minus the slides. They'd scrub, chat, and chill, making it a full-blown social scene. But get this, they didn't change the water all that often. Yikes. Imagine soaking in a giant, lukewarm human soup. Ew, right? These Roman bathhouses were like the happening spot. But guess what else they were? A paradise for all sorts of nasty stuff. The water might have looked inviting, but lurking in the germs were having a pool party of their own. Think skin infections, nasty rashes, and tummy troubles that made you wish you had a time machine just to escape the bathroom blues. And don't even get me started on the big bad, dysentery. It was like the boogeyman of ancient Rome, lurking around thanks to the not-so-hygienic bathroom scenes. Dysentery was that unwelcome guest crashing the party, causing serious tummy mayhem that nobody wanted. Let's just say, avoiding that bug was a full-time job. Infant mortality. Now let's dive into a tough one, the ancient bummer of high infant mortality. Back in ancient Rome, being a baby was like signing up for the ultimate survival challenge, and not the fun kind you play on your Xbox. The odds were stacked against them, like a lopsided game of baby versus the ancient world. You see, tons of tiny tots didn't make it past their first year. It was like starting a level on hard mode and trying to beat the boss without any cheat codes. Why? Well, it was a combo of things. To start with, there were no fancy hospitals or super smart doctors like we have today. When babies got sick, they didn't have access to our high-tech remedies. It was more like hoping for the best and crossing your fingers, which, let's face it, didn't always do the trick. Plus, hygiene wasn't exactly their strong suit. Remember those not-so-fresh bathrooms we talked about earlier? Yeah, babies didn't have a no-sharing sponge policy, so they were exposed to all kinds of yuckiness right from the get-go. And that made fighting off sickness a pretty uphill battle. And here's the kicker. They didn't have superhero diapers or comfy cribs. Nope. It was like survival mode from day one, with limited resources and no guarantees. So, while being a baby today might mean getting cuddles and naps, back then, it was like being in a game where the odds weren't exactly in your favor. Slavery, poverty, and the harsh social hierarchy. Okay, it's time to talk about the social scene in ancient Rome, and spoiler alert, it wasn't all cool togas and fancy feasts. First off, let's talk about slavery. It was like this whole other world where people didn't have much say in anything. They were more like characters in a game controlled by others with zero power-ups. Now, picture this, being someone's property, doing hard labor, and no escape button in sight. Not exactly a fun quest, right? Apart from that, you will be amazed to know that 80% of the hard jobs in the Roman Empire were dependent on these slaves. From gladiators to home servants, all were slaves. Now you can imagine how dependent was Roman Empire on these slaves. But still, they were one of the most miserable communities of the Roman Empire. A 20% slave population is what historians estimate the Roman Empire to have possessed. In the 1st century AD, this would mean that between 5 and 10 million people within the estimated 50 million person Roman Empire were slaves. Now imagine if your birth certificate said slave, because, well, your mom was one. No leveling up from that status. You're stuck in the starting zone, and guess what? There's no epic quest to change your fate. Sleeping arrangements? Not exactly luxury suites. Think a blanket on a pile of straw in the kitchen? Yep, that was their idea of a 5-star setup. And legal rights? Forget about it. Slaves couldn't even swipe right for marriage. But here's the real kicker. They did the hardest, darkest quest, working in mines and quarries. These were like the ultimate dungeons, but no treasure chests here, just cramped tunnels and 0 breaks. Day and night shifts, try non-stop grind. And guess what? The overseers weren't mythical creatures, but the ones who didn't know the meaning of humanity. And get this, the sufferings were off the charts. The conditions were so tough that many of them chose to die instead of dealing with the never-ending struggle. So yeah, being a Roman slave was not a wanted title at all. It doesn't end here. Roman lords sold both males and females as prostitutes. These masters profited from the sexual and physical mistreatment of their slaves. Slaves served as sexual objects for their owners. Without a trial, a master could execute his slaves. They even had skilled crucifixion crews with all the necessary tools, including boards, ropes, shackles, nails, and other requirements. The slave would be stripped, flayed until he was bleeding, and then nailed to a cross by a team of whipmen. The slave's legs would be broken, causing him to experience excruciating pain every time he attempted to stand. In such a circumstance, a Roman slave's life may expire in less than 48 hours. As a warning to other slaves, the body was left out for vultures and dogs. Less painful methods of killing included being burned alive and feeding lions. The misery of a slave's life varied but often ended in great suffering. Ruthless gladiator games moving on to the gladiator games, a bit like that ultimate battle royale, but without respawns. Imagine huge arenas, cheering crowds, and warriors stepping into the spotlight ready to rumble. But it wasn't just about fighting. It was a mix of bravery, entertainment, and a serious fight for survival. So, gladiator games weren't your typical Sunday sport. Nope, they were like the Super Bowl meets a roller coaster of emotions. These guys weren't just swinging swords for fun. They were fighting for their lives, and winning meant staying alive another day. The combat? More intense than a showdown in your favorite action game. It was up close and personal, with warriors risking it all in a dance of swords, shields, and serious skill. But here's the catch. It wasn't just about winning. Gladiators had to be entertainers too. It was like performing a high-stakes show, trying to impress the crowd while dodging lethal blows. Talk about multitasking, right? Now the risks? Oh boy, they were sky high. A gladiator's resume didn't boast retirement plans. It was more like a life expectancy sheet. Every fight was a roll of the dice. Win, and you live to fight another day. Lose, and well, let's just say the obituary was written before the battle even started. And while the crowds cheered, these fighters battled not just opponents, but the sheer fear of not making it out alive. Merciless political intrigues. Last but not least, the melodrama of ancient Rome's political and elite cadre. Even though you had been lucky enough to be in the elite or the royals, still your chances of survival would be less. Think of it as Game of Thrones, but without dragons. Well, maybe with a few power-hungry snakes slithering around. The political setup in ancient Rome wasn't just about cozy debates and handshakes. It was a no-holds-barred battle for power. The elites? They played a game where trust was as rare as a gold coin in a piggy bank. Politics wasn't all about friendly discussions over pizza. It was more like a shady poker game where everyone was bluffing and holding secret cards up their togas. Backstabbing? Oh yeah, it wasn't just a phrase, it was a hobby for some. See, gaining or keeping power wasn't a walk in the forum. It was like trying to climb Mount Olympus, but instead of reaching the gods, you're trying to reach the top without getting pushed off. Your best buddy today could be plotting your downfall tomorrow. Talk about trust issues. We know what happened to Julius Caesar. And the emperors? Think of them as the ultimate bosses, with zero patience for slacking off. From Augustus Caesar to Nero, there were many of them with the same gist. Cross them, and you're in for a one-way trip to the Colosseum, minus the VIP seating. Their punishments were scarier than facing a horde of angry lions. Being on the wrong side of politics wasn't just about losing an election. It was a matter of life and death. The elites played a dangerous game of who's next, while the rest of us tried to steer clear of their crosshairs. So imagine a world where power struggles weren't just a metaphor, but a daily reality. It was like trying to survive a constant storm of plotting, betrayals, and power plays. Thus, surviving a day in ancient Rome wasn't just a challenge. It was like playing through a game, with every level cranked up to the max. From chaotic streets to mind-boggling social setups and the adrenaline-packed gladiator arenas, what a roller coaster. Imagine yourself in those sandals, facing the epic chaos and unpredictability of ancient life. Could you make it through 24 hours in that whirlwind of a world? Even though they were tough cookies, the Romans faced it all with a bravery level that puts modern-day heroes to shame. It's like they had a cheat code for resilience and adaptability. Jokes apart. Let's reflect on their struggles, their victories, and their unmatched spirit. Because let's face it, surviving just a day in their shoes wasn't our cup of tea at all. It's a journey that leaves us in awe of their resilience. Share your thoughts on these aspects of ancient Rome. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new adventure with History Duck.